If you are an athlete and you are struggling to find your purpose beyond your sport, if you want to integrate God into your life and discover your purpose, if you are lost and need encouragement, then this podcast is for you.
I've been chosen. Watch me put it in motion. Got strong emotions. Manifest what I've spoken.
I'm your host, Keith Datu, and welcome to another episode of Beyond the Painted Lines. Today, I have a very special guest, my boy Kenny. What's up, man?
You said guest. What's up?
Okay. All right, give me a brief background on you. Tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Okay, I mean, it's not much to say. Pretty average guy. We met through a really good friend of ours as well. So, we kind of met through same church and we met through the same people. So I'm happy that we were able to kind of meet in that regards where it was just discussing our faith and everything. So yeah, pretty cool. Pretty just average guy.
Yeah, so Kenny and I met our small group at church, Victory, and the BGC group. And today I decided to have him on the show because I think he has some really great insights on today's topic. And today's topic is dating culture as a whole in today's society, also as Christians. And I think that's super overlooked, especially nowadays. It's very common for us to not be monogamous. Our dating culture nowadays is honestly really hard, in my opinion, and especially much different that I've seen so far here in the Philippines, even though I'm not dating anyone, period, but not dating in the Philippines versus my only experience of dating has been in the US, and so there's also cultural differences that I'm discovering along the way here. I chose you as a guest for today's topic because I think you have some really good insights on dating culture. But would you mind briefly sharing about your faith? What has led you to become a Christian? I know this could be like an hour-long topic in itself. And why specifically I chose you for this dating topic. We've talked about our past relationships and I think we bonded through our trauma that way. So go for it.
Yeah, so essentially how I started with my faith and, how we already started kind of getting closer, we started to open up more. And I think that's the importance of like having your friends going through the same thing, especially when your faith walk, right? So essentially what we did or how we got closer was through the traumas that we've been through in our previous relationships. And I'm not saying that I'm perfect. I'm saying like I've made my mistakes too. I made a lot of mess ups and kind of a lot of things that I had to change for myself. And that's how I kind of grew my faith, right? Growing in your faith means you have to go through a lot of problems. You have to go through a lot of refining. You have to go through a lot of trauma in order for you to get built up back again. So when we were talking about, when we were starting to get closer and we kind of talked about our previous relationships, we have similar stories in such that, we felt like we had a lot of things to improve on with ourselves, but it kind of bled into a relationship. And we had conversations where we forgot who we were in those relationships. So
kind of losing ourselves along the way, trying to cater to our partners, or not lose our partners. Or we lost track of like the overall picture instead of just, in the moment. Yeah. And I think you have a lot of depth to you. I think we just barely skimmed the surface. Would you mind sharing more about like the big things that's happened in your life and how that led to you being a Christian now?
All right. So how my faith grew and how my relationship with God kind of took place, right? Long story short, what happened was my life was in a spiral. I wasn't happy where I was anymore. And none of the parties, none of the alcohol and, other stuff that was fill those voids and try to fill the happiness with those things. It just wasn't cutting it anymore. So, and then it came to a point where I was desperate for change. I was desperate for something to change in my life. I went back to my faith because honestly, during that time last year when a lot of things was going on in my life, I honestly forgot to pray. I forgot to come back to God. I forgot to cultivate that relationship with Him and just talk to Him again. So my accountability partner Joaquin, which you'll have him at another time. I reached out to him and I just saw his post because he posts his biblical stories all the time. I was like, hey bro, like I saw you post your story and then you want to hang out in Starbucks. And I thought he wasn't gonna take it seriously. I thought he was just gonna brush it off, but he responded and he said, yeah, next week. And if you know that guy, if he says something, he's gonna do it. So he scheduled something for next week. We saw each other, and bro, I'm telling you, the first 10 minutes we were talking, I already cried to him, and we haven't spoken to each other for like a year plus. And I just cried.
You just opened up.
I just opened up. Yeah, and again, mind you, I have not spoken to the guy for years, and then I just cried to him. So
how did he take it?
He just looked at me and he just kind of paused, and then it was like he was listening with an open heart. He wasn't judging me. He wasn't trying to tell me that what this problem is kind of baba or this problem is kind of surface level. But no, he was really listening to me with an open heart. So I think that was really the game changer there. And obviously I attribute my growth in God only to God, but he's a huge chunk as to why my walk in faith has been consistent, and he's one of the reasons why you kind of be consistent with your walk in faith. So yeah, the friends you hang out with is really important.
That's great. No, I thank you for sharing. Thanks for being on the pod today. Now let's dive into our topics of dating culture as a Christian in today's world, right?
Yeah.
Why should we be talking about this? And how is it related to our faith?
Okay, I'll just have the audience know that we're not perfect.
Definitely not.
We are not perfect.
Definitely not perfect.
We're not trying to talk to them from a higher pedestal because we're Christians.
We're still learning ourselves.
Exactly. So the things that we say is part of our growth together as friends, and part of our growth for our God, for a relationship with Him. So we are not perfect at all. Like, we've messed up so many times, just to be clear, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
We have conversations about this when the camera's not rolling.
Yeah.
It seems difficult in today's world to date, especially as a Christian, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Christian values, we are supposed to hold ourselves at such a high standard, right? And it's no Christian's perfect. We're gonna sin, we're gonna mess up, even if we're not doing it intentionally. Even if we're not trying to be out in the streets.
Right.
But even as Christians, we still fall to temptations, to lust, to novelty, and it's hard to stay on track. It's also hard trying to find the right person for you, especially when everyone else is facing the same battles, the same inner demons.
The way I see it, and again, this is what works for me, this is what works for my group of friends, so you don't have to share the same sentiments as we do, but this is what we believe in, or what I personally believe in. So I think it's important to talk about the dating culture now, is because we've become so lax of how relationships should be. Whereas as Christians and as people who walk in their faith, we also forget how to be a good Christian in a relationship, right? So I think that one of the values that we should always remember is how to be patient and how to be humble in a relationship. So I think sometimes we think that being right is sometimes it gets skewed, where you have to be right, you have to be always right, you have to be kind of talking to your partner in such a way that you have to prove yourself, when it's not. Sometimes the best way to approach a relationship now is just to be humble and to be really understanding of your partner, right? So I think modern dating now, or dating culture now, has gotten to a point where it's becoming too casual for me.
Casual in the sense of the type of dating, the dating style.
Yeah, dating style.
Or even how serious we're taking our partner.
Yeah.
Why are we even on a date to begin with?
It's
what's the outcome we're looking for? Yeah.
And I'm guilty of this too. It was really just to get somewhere physically. How can we cultivate a deeper relationship? How can we cultivate a deeper bond with someone? And
it's hard because even if you are attracted to that person, sometimes they're not even looking for that.
Yeah. A lot of people develop anxiety. A lot of people develop whether they're good enough for someone, and then they tend to end up they end up thinking about the physical aspects of their life. Do they look good? Do they dress good? Do they smell good? Do they Well, all those things are kind of important, okay? Look good, feel good, and be fresh, okay? Be clean.
I think that's definitely important, at least especially at the start of trying to spark something between you two. But supposedly that stuff fades, right?
It does. And again, Pastor Pao told us that in the Garrison talk we watched, you have to be attracted to your partner. So there's nothing wrong with being attracted to someone pretty. So there's nothing wrong with that. Like,
well, yeah, I mean, I don't think it's going to work if there's no fire to begin with.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So from that, how can we develop a deeper bond through a Christian lens with someone? And personally, I think it starts with being honest now.
Just be upfront, like...
Just be upfront.
Here's my intentions, like, at the start.
Exactly.
Okay.
And some people think that that's too upfront, but there are times where you have to feel it out and trying to gauge your partner, but it's always good now to be honest. And I think a lot of the times that's where I fell before, where I was trying to be sneaky, or when I was trying to be a little bit unintentional with my intentions. So I think that now that I've grown in my faith, it's really important for me to tell my partner, and shout out Cece. So when I talk about Cece and when we go through a lot of our things, we really dive into each other's feelings and understand, okay, this is how I feel, and this is what I want from you, and all of those things are valid. So I think how we started off our relationship was really good because it was really intentional from the start. She knew what I wanted. She knew what she wanted.
Open and honest up front.
Yeah. It has to be. Cece, from the start, knew what she wanted, right? And she was just honest with me, and she just told me that, okay, this is what I want right now. Though she wasn't like super deep in her faith, she still knew what she wanted, and from the start it was clear. So I think that's the difference for me now growing in my faith, is that I'm much more intentional now with what I do. I'm much more forthcoming in terms of what I want in a relationship, and obviously, yeah.
Do you think that you need to be 100% healed before you jump into another relationship?
Personally, I don't think so. I don't think you have to be 100% healed in entering another relationship. Definitely go through what you feel like you have to work through on your own. If you feel like you can enter another relationship not being fully healed, and you think that you can let that other person kind of help you heal through some of the traumas, I'm not super good at that. So.
I think it depends on your own personal maturity and development, the baggage that you would be carrying into the next relationship as well, right?
Oh yeah.
Let's just say like it's been 5 years since like a breakup, and I think now I'm ready to jump into the next relationship. I think time does play a big aspect of healing, but it's also what you do with that time, right? Like if 5 years goes by and you don't work on yourself in those 5 years, I think the next I still think you're not ready for the next relationship. But let's just say the next one's only 1 year instead of 5, but you like do tremendous like self-healing throughout the process, finding God and whatever you need to do within that 1 year, then I think you're more ready than waiting 5 years.
Yeah,
But
100%.
I don't think you need to be 100% ready, but I think also the right person will also help you too, as long as you're proactive within yourself. So if you're like 75% ready, 75% healed, then I would say that's a pretty good ratio.
Yeah.
If you're confident jumping into the next one.
Honestly, when I think about it, when Cece and I were starting off, she said something that really hit me, and I tried to understand it from a perspective of a godly perspective, where she said, I've told you so many things about myself, and how come you don't think I'm a red flag, right? And then the only thing I told her was, is my name Jesus? So I asked her, is my name Jesus? And she was like, what do you mean? And I was like, is my name Jesus? And she said, no. Is your name Jesus? And I went, no. So who am I to judge you for the mistakes you did, when I've probably made just as bad of mistakes as you did? So,
that's a pretty powerful analogy you threw at her.
Yeah. even if she wasn't, this was our first date, by the way.
Wow.
So this was our first date.
You didn't hold anything back.
No, I didn't. I was afraid that it might shake her to her core. Like, I was really afraid that was gonna happen. But by the grace of God, I'm happy that Cece has been really consistent with her faith, and we've been attending service together. But yeah, to go back, when we went through that, I just basically said, you and I aren't Jesus. None of us are perfect. Why would it be fair for you that I would call you a red flag? And then I laid down my mistakes in the past. I laid down everything that I've done with my previous relationships, everything that I've done in my past. So none of us are perfect. So it's really unfair for someone to be judging you and calling you a red flag. If you're trying to improve your life, then why is it fair for you to judge someone and keep them there? So if they aspire to be better, then help them. Don't disclose or don't discredit their efforts to be better. So yeah, I think it's really good.
For sure. Love that. So, side note, I see you got a box of water on the table. What's up with that?
Okay, shout out to Generation Hope, or Hope in a Bottle. So
In a bottle?
Hope in a box, but we call it Hope in a Bottle.
Okay.
So this is from Hope. Shout out to my office mates, to everyone, ops team, everyone there, Owen, NMP, shout out to you guys. But yeah, basically what they do is every time you buy this, and if you see the bottled water, usually you see this in Starbucks, we help in building classrooms for the marginalized sector. So, all of the profits go to building classrooms. So shout out to Hope. If you see this,
get Hope in a box. Get Hope in a bottle.
thank you.
Product placement. Shout out Anta. The Kai ones right here. These are actually like no cap, not just because I'm an Anta boy, but like no cap. Like, these are like one of my favorite basketball shoes I've worn to this day. So shout out Anta Philippines. Shout out Kyrie Irving. We got Clay's. I'm wearing a Clay shirt. All right. So, but sometimes, like, kind of what we were talking about earlier, like finding someone who's compatible or suitable for you. Sometimes what you think is making you happy isn't what's right for you.
Yeah.
And I think we fall into that trap, and or we want someone to be the one for us so bad, we overlook all the things that aren't right, and we can still love that person, and we can still, try to demonstrate God's love too, along the way. But like, even though this person makes me so happy, like, maybe there's someone better for her. Maybe there's someone better for me. That's the wave that I've been on lately as a newly single individual.
With what you said, it's what we want, right? Keyword, what we want. And sometimes what we want is not the best for us.
Yeah.
So we have to remind ourselves that every time we want something, we first have to pray for it, and ask God, is this the best that He intends for us? What I do now is, before I met Cece, is I prayed for my partner, even though I don't know her yet. God protect my future wife. God protect my future spouse.
I love that.
Be safe. Let her be okay, mentally, physically, spiritually. I don't want anything to happen to her, even though I haven't met her.
So, like, with you saying those things, sorry to interrupt, but like, you saying those things, that also means that you have to be ready to handle those things.
Oh,
too.
100%.
So you have to work on yourself and make sure that you're all these things that you're trying to find in your partner as well.
Right. So I think that it's a perfect segue to in dating now. And then if you ever meet a Christian, you'll probably hear this a lot, when wives have to be submissive or submit to your husbands.
Yeah,
right?
I know the verse.
Right,
yeah.
right. So that does not mean you have to be what do you call that? Like an anti-feminist or something. It's not you being an anti-feminist. In the eyes of God, we're all equal. We're all of the same value. But as a man and as men of Christ, we have to be damn sure that when that woman comes, we earn the right of submission. They're not just gonna. And ladies, like, don't just submit to guys because you feel like, oh, he's handsome, he's rich, he's like that.
Yeah,
no.
don't give it all up unless it's for a worthy man.
He has to be worthy. Perfect word. So he has to be worthy. Number one, you have to be able to provide for this girl. Yeah, you have to be able to nurture this girl, nurture your family, protect your family, give up your life for your family. So
The wife should be submissive to the husband, but
Yeah.
that husband has to be willing to give his life
Yeah.
for her. He has
Ephesians
to be
5:25. Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah. For everyone, so I don't mess up the words, it's Ephesians 5:25. Husbands, love your wives just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. Key words here, gave himself up for her. For a quick segue, when God gave up his only son, it wasn't for us to serve Christ. It was Christ to serve us, for him to die on the cross for our sins, for him to die on the cross to save us, right? Because we were so messed up, we were so bad before that Christ had to redeem us by dying on the cross, right? So guys, and for the ladies, if you are to submit to your husbands, or if you are to submit to your future partners, the guys have to remember that number one, you have to lay it all down for your wife. That includes your wants and needs. So if you want to continue being a PBA player, but there's something happening at your home, something happening to your wife and your kids, then you have to reassess your life and say, where are my priorities at? And it has to be your family. You have to give up your own personal desires for your family.
I think that husband has to prioritize God.
Yeah, put himself first.
In order to prioritize his family, right?
Yeah,
He can't treat his woman the way that he's supposed to if he's not a God-fearing man to begin with.
Agreed.
Like, ladies, if you're listening to this, you hear us guys talking about finding a submissive wife. You know, we're trying to turn ourselves into worthy leaders. And so we also need someone that's on board with the goals that we have for our lives and our careers and what we want in our family and kids and our views of following Christ and doing all those things too. So it's our job to make sure that we are worthy men for you to give yourselves to.
Yeah, for them to trust us
Yeah.
wholeheartedly, and we're not just gonna be like, the girl's not just gonna be, I'm gonna submit to you. No, us guys have to prove to you that we're even worth submitting to.
100%. You know, and I think it's hard to, like, in today's world too. You know, I think there's a lot of selfish, narcissistic culture going on right now, and I think it's genuinely. Luckily, I try to surround myself with good people, but I've also seen relationships where it's totally one-sided, and just friends who think they're so entitled. Just trying to be better, just trying to shed light on the dating culture here. And so another thing I find important to speak about on this topic of dating culture, right, is also the hookup culture aspect of it. As fun as it sounds, you know, that's not what we're supposed to represent within our faith. I feel like it's much more stronger and prominent in the States where I'm from rather than here in the Philippines. But I know it's a worldwide thing, obviously. And I feel like opportunities are always there too, especially with the culture just within my own career, you know, like being an athlete and what I do beyond the painted lines, right? How do you think that we can shift the narrative on hookup culture?
Here it's a little bit more conservative. I think in the States, I'm not so sure, so I don't want to touch on that. I haven't lived in the States or long enough for me to say.
I feel like situationships is really popular.
Yeah, I think here too. So, okay, there maybe that we can align on, but hookup culture here is a little bit more conservative, where men are more like light switches. You can just turn them on. And then
Nice.
women are like slow dials, where you have to slowly turn them. It takes more time for girls here to kind of just give it up. I hope they're not just throwing themselves out there, both men and women. So we're also guilty of that before, but you know, I hope it's much more deeper than that now. But I don't want to like come off as judgy. I'm not trying to be judgy with with them, because I know I felt to this culture. I know I felt to this habit too, where I wasn't building deeper connections. I wasn't building godly relationships, right? So yeah.
Is it wrong to want novelty but not necessarily the lust aspect of it? Like
the thrill?
The thrill. Is it wrong to chase the thrill? Tough one. Tough one.
Tough.
It's also a fine line.
I'm not quite sure. It's a gray area. All I know is this: if it's the hookup culture, or if we strive for situationships, all I know is, out of a Bible context, not only is it bad for people, but it just causes anxiety. It causes a lot of insecurity. It causes a lot of doubt. Maybe some type of mental problem with you. And I know this from experience, and I'm happy that my partner was able to humble me in terms of this regard, but that's a long story. But yeah, I think situationships and the hookup culture really just creates this difficulty for people where, am I good enough? Am I personable? Am I really worthy of this partner, this love? When we're looking for love in the wrong places, when we should really strive for love from Christ first, and then that will in turn change your life and change how you see yourself, right? So if you love Christ more than you love your relationships and you put him first, you start to live your life like him. Live like a Christ-like life. And when you live like a Christ-like life, that's life like Christ, Christ-like life. That's when you know what your value is as a person, what you want in a relationship, and how you can respond to certain situations. So if you know Christ as much as you want to know him, it's easier for you to navigate through relationships. I believe it doesn't cause you anxiety and things like this. So personally, I think, just to close this point in this situationship conversation, is that if ever you feel like you're in a situationship, if you feel like you're trapped in a situationship, or you're trapped in this hookup culture circle, it's never gonna break. You're gonna get stuck.
You got to be the one to break it.
You gotta break it.
Yeah.
And the only way to break it, in our context, in our faith, it's only through Christ. Breaking bondage, breaking addiction, breaking lust, sex, addiction, vices. That's only through Christ, and it's only through the grace of God and through the power of the Holy Spirit that we can actually change and be better, right? Yeah, if you want to break out of that circle, just try to find it in you and really try to break that cycle with the love of God. Get to know him first.
Thanks for sharing, and the last bullet I have on here is living for the world versus living for God, right? Yeah. And I think that we can directly use that with dating, finding people potentially share the rest of your life with.
Right.
Right. And so, like, all my guys listening to this, I encourage you to work on yourself and be the best version of you. Actually, can you grab this book right here? This is not a Christian book, but I highly recommend this. The Way of the Superior Man by David Data, a spiritual guide to mastering the challenges of women, work, and sexual desire. I think this is a great read for every guy, and especially if you were trying to find the perfect woman for you, because you have to become, no one's perfect, but you have to become the perfect man in your in your mind, in your eyes, in order to find the one that you are searching for. To all my guys, we're constantly doing our best to be our best, right. And for you ladies out there too, don't settle for a guy who's not working on themselves constantly, who's not trying to be the best version of themselves, because how can they serve you if they can't even do what's good for them? If they're taking the shortcut, if they're not delaying their gratification, if they're going for the cheap, quick dopamine hit, if they're
cheap thrills,
if they're going for the cheap thrills, what's available, the temptations, the lust, is that the man that you really want at the end of the day too? Or do you want someone who's going to wait for you? But if you're looking for that man to wait for you, you got to wait for him, and you got to do the same thing for them as well.
Right. And a quick thing is that we were not always like this in our mindset. So don't get us wrong.
I would argue that I'm still not even there where I need to be.
We're still working on it.
Absolutely.
We will never be perfect.
I'm healing fresh out of a relationship.
Right. Exactly.
Fresh out. And
so when we say these things, we're just coming from a place from our learning so far.
Yeah.
From our walk.
And I know that and I know the things I need to work on, and there's things that I need to work on that I might have not even become aware of yet. But I know what the goal is in mind. I'm thankful to have a great group of guys and a great pastor, a great leader.
Shout out P-Pat and P-Pow.
Shout out Victory for sure.
Love you guys.
They brought us together.
Oh, so, shout out Moses, bro.
Shout out Moses, our small group leader. Definitely.
Yeah, shout out Moses.
Do you have any closing remarks, bro?
Yeah, so I guess like to kind of close it off, just the key takeaways is, again, the two of us we're not going to be perfect. No one's going to be perfect. So it's just the three things is that, number one, if you're seeking for love and if you're seeking for that deeper connection, find Christ first. Find your purpose in life, through Christ. And if you find your purpose in life, you find now your partner that can share that same purpose. So when you find your partner that you want to marry, make sure that your goals are aligned, and make sure that that goal is Christ on top, and then you guys put him in the center of that triangle.
Prioritize God first. Everything else should fall into place.
Exactly. And afterwards. It goes to the worldly conversation where if we were to choose our earthly desires, or we call them worldly desires, when worldly desires come in front, we forget what our purpose in life is. We forget how to treat our partners. We forget how to treat them with respect.
I talked with Joaquin, and he dropped a good bar. He said a Christ-centered relationship is undeniable.
And that's 100% true. Now that I'm with my beautiful partner, Cece, I love you so much.
Oh my goodness.
If you're gonna find that girl, if you're gonna find that guy, and if you put Christ in the center and that relationship is built with Christ, my goodness, it's gonna be super easy. Because everything that you guys talk about will be, okay, let's pray, let's reground ourselves, regroup ourselves, and then pray about it. And the direction that God will make for the both of you is going to be so straight. It's going to be easier. Though there are challenges, but you know what I mean? When it's like just smooth, it's just a boat going with the tide. It's just smooth,
Yeah, and it's not always going to be smooth, but
yeah.
The right partner will
make it easier.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
for
it'll
sure.
make it easier. So, find Christ first. Find that partner that will help you grow your relationship in Christ, and overall just sacrifice your worldly desires for your partner and for the glory of God.
Yeah. Dude, thank you so much for sharing. I think we got some good gems locked in on this episode right here. So this was episode 12, Dating Culture. As a Christian, as an athlete, as people who want to follow Christ and find other people who are searching for the same thing. So thank you guys for watching another episode of Beyond the Painted Lines. I am Keith Datu.
Kenny.
Well, where can people find you? Your
my
social
Instagram,
media, right?
it's @_ Kenneth Miranda on IG. I barely have followers. I'm just a normal guy.
And you know where to find me, @KeithDA2. All right. Thank you for tuning in. See you next time.
Peace.
I've been chosen. Watch me put it in motion. Got strong emotions. Manifest what I've spoken.